So far, we have glossed over how R finds the best fitting model when we run the LM function. The mathematics are beyond the scope of this course, but conceptually it is relatively simple to understand. So in this video, we're going to see how we calculate the optimal linear model for any dataset. It is always important to understand how our models are working, because models make simplifying assumptions. When we are evaluating our models, we need to check that our assumptions are actually met, and to do that, we really need to understand how the model works. Let's revisit our nice Sim1 dataset, where we have two variables, x and y, and an obvious linear correlation between them. Theoretically, we could draw all kinds of straight lines on this graph. Some of them would go through the data nicely, and some of them would not. Let's take a look at one model that is not very good. Here we have a linear model that is just a horizontal line with a slope of 0 and an intercept of 15. So what this model does is it predicts a y value of 15 for any input value of x. It doesn't matter if x is 1 or 100. The model will always predict a y value of 15. Now, this is a valid model. It has a slope and an intercept, but we can see just by looking at the graph that it is not a good model, and it is certainly not the model that best fits the data. So how does R calculate how good or bad that fit is? Well, what R and other statistical programs do is to look at the size of something called residuals. For every point in our dataset, we have the real observed y value, and we have a predicted y value that the model can calculate for any value of x. The difference between the real value of y and the model's predicted value of y for that data point is called the residual. In the graph on this slide, the residuals for our model are shown in blue. Now there are an infinite number of lines that we could fit to this data, and we could calculate the residuals for any of them. This is the optimal line to fit to our data, and you can see that the residuals are a lot smaller than the horizontal line model on the previous slide. So we can add up all the residuals, and that sum, that total, gives us a measure of how well the model fits the data. The better the model fits, the smaller the sum of the residuals will be. Now technically we don't add up just the plain old residuals. We actually square each residual first, and then we add up the squares, as this equation here shows. Then we try to find the line with the smallest sum of the squared residuals. The name of this method of finding a model comes from this. We call it the least squares method. So why should you care about residuals? Well, you can use residuals to examine whether your model's assumptions are met. The assignments for this module will introduce you to the assumptions of linear models and how we can use residuals to investigate whether or not our data fits these assumptions.